Hello and welcome back to my Cheat Engine tutorial series. We are finally at step 9. And if we look at step 9, we can see that we have 4 players on the screen. The first 2 players have 100 health and the second 2 players have 500 health. And if we restart this game and autoplay, it's going to decrease our health value until we die. The only problem is they have so much more health than we do that we're going to die first every time. So if I restart this, let's just start off by finding our health. Now it does mention in the tutorial here that our health is set as a float value. So let's start by setting this to a float, and I'm just going to search 100. And I'll attack Dave and wait for that value to go down, and we can see that right here. So the first thing that we would typically do in a game would be to just find out what access or writes to this address. And we can see that it's this instruction right here. And if we open up disassembler, we could just replace this with a code that does nothing, and we can see that that works. The only problem is that instruction accesses different addresses, and it happens to access all of these addresses here. If we restart and autoplay the game, nothing's going to happen because everybody's health is frozen, and we have to differentiate between our players and the other players. And to do that, we need to find out first off what addresses this particular instruction code accesses, and we can do that by right-clicking and find out what addresses this instruction accesses. And if we click on each one of these guys, we can see that they're all being accessed by this opcode. So what we can do, and if you look at these numbers, they don't look like these numbers over here, and that's because this window defaults to 4 bytes. We'll go ahead and change that to float, and we can see our values accordingly. Okay, so from here we can stop and close our debugger, and we're just going to select all of these and open dissect data with selected addresses. And by dissecting the data, it's basically going to show us all of those addresses and all of those offsets and what they mean. So I'm just going to choose all the defaults here. Okay, and then we can see that we have 4 different addresses here. And then these are all the offsets, and this basically contains all of the information about this particular player and this particular player. Now it's really handy because it actually stores the string which contains the name of each player here. So if I wanted to, I could double click over here and just say player name. It doesn't do anything other than keep things a little sorted for you, but we need to decipher the difference between our player and the other players. Okay, so what I can do, if I click on one of these, you see it puts a bold little border around each one of these boxes or these addresses. So for Dave, I'm going to right click his address and I'm going to click change group, and I'm going to create a new group. We'll just call it group 2, and I'm also going to put Eric in group 2 as well, since I assume we're on the same team. All right. So we need to find addresses, or we need to find values that are different between these groups. Now if we click on view and go to settings, you can see that we're looking for group difference, which is a purple value. And the only thing that I really see right offhand is this right here, but this just appears to be our health. So if I change any of these, then that's not going to stay the same. And in this particular case, we don't have any unique values. Now I've done this tutorial before, and I know that this right here is supposed to be the group number. We can see that we have group 3, group 4, group 4, and group 4, but that's not always the case, and sometimes this tutorial will throw you a curveball. In that case, it's better to do a fail-safe than it is to just assume that you're going to have group numbers here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my memory view, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and clear any previous addresses from the other tutorials. And I'm going to open our auto assembler, and I'm going to do an array of bytes injection. Choose the defaults, that's just allocating memory. And then what I can do is I can look for specific players. Okay, so I know that our names are located in the offset of 19, in RBX, since this is a 64-bit process. This may be EBX on 32-bit. Okay, so it's easier to find what we don't want than it is to find what we do want. And what I mean by that is we're going to work with Hal and Kit instead of Dave and Eric. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare dword PTR. Now, essentially, a word is 16-bit, and a D just stands for double, making this a 32-bit value. PTR just assumes that you're sending or you're pushing a pointer to the stack, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this value is going to be a pointer or this address is going to be a pointer. Okay, so we're working with RBX and the offset of 19, and we're going to look for Hal. Now this is case sensitive, so you have to type it exactly as it appears over here. And if it equals, so we're going to jump if that equals to code, which is down here. Code is what's actually subtracting our health, so we want to avoid this. For everybody else, we want to jump over this. So we're going to do the same thing. I can copy and paste this. And we can do the same thing for Kit as well. And then if we don't meet these criteria here, then we're just going to jump to return. Now you can see in our original code, once it subtracts the data, it's going to jump to return and go back to the normal program code. Well, that's what we want to do. Okay, so looks for Hal, jumps to code because it's equal. Now by code I mean down here, this label right here, it's going to jump to this label. All right, and the same thing for these guys right here. Okay, so if I assign this to my cheat table and I enable it, if I click on attack, we can see nothing is happening for Dave and Eric, but we can still go down whenever we're working with Hal and Kit. So let's go ahead and restart this game in autoplay. And we can see that we have won and our next button has lit up. So this is one approach to solving this. I know that, like I said, typically you would go off the group names because it would separate Dave and Eric into group 1 and Hal and Kit into group 2. Let's say that that was on the offset of 18. Let me come back in here. Let me disable my script first off. And I'll just show you what that would look like if that was the case. So let's edit our script. We'll get rid of all of our code here. And we would compare, like let's say Hal and Kit are in group 2 and Dave and Eric are in group 1. So I would compare, is it RBX? Yeah, RBX and the offset of 18. So we're going to compare RBX plus 18 to the value of 1, which is us. And we're going to jump if that's not equal to code. And then we're just going to jump to return for everybody else. Now this isn't going to work because obviously Hal is set to team 3 and everybody else is set to team 4. I'm not sure why or how, but essentially that's typically what this tutorial would look like, and this would provide the exact same thing. It would look for anybody in group 1 and it's going to jump if not equal to code, which is going to subtract their health. But if not, then it's just going to jump to the end of the code and bypass this altogether. So this can be a little confusing. The best approach is just to do it over and over again until you get the hang of it. If you have access to Assault Cube, which is a free first-person shooter, it's a very small file size. It's really nice to practice this on because it's the exact same thing. If you find your health in Assault Cube and you knock that out, it's going to affect all of your enemies as well. So you have to find a unique value or find your player and do the exact same thing that we've done here. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial series. I'll be doing Let's Hack Games and videos in future, so stay tuned for those. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it.